DarkOfAllTrades here. Now, it's no secret that I have issues. I think everybody has issues. Some are better at working on them than others. Some have entire subscriptions. Yes, that joke did come from the 90s, thank you for noticing. One issue that I, and many other consumers of content based on atheism versus theism, often find is the topic of evolution, or Darwinism, as it is wrongly expressed or at best conflated in religious circles. Whether you understand and accept the fact of evolution or not, this term is often used to try to characterize evolution and evolutionary concepts as just another religion. Of course, evolution does not meet the criteria of a religion put forth by any government or credible organization that I know of, but go ahead and look for yourself. Find the criteria for a religion and see if evolution fits and how. Leave a comment below if you have a source for the criteria for which evolution would qualify as a religion. One criterion used in pretty much every source I have found involves some number of practices or rituals directly connected to the idea of something that transcends the human, temporal, and contingent concerns, or at least something similar. If one accepts the fact of evolution, there is no practice involved. There is no ritual one needs to do to qualify as a Darwinist, if that is even the actual term. One can accept the fact of evolution and believe pretty much anything else. There is theistic evolution, which states that a creator made some form of life on Earth, and it has since changed over time. This is more of an attempt to fit a god into the science of what we already know by trying to explain a very small gap in our knowledge of how life began here on Earth. We know of natural processes that can cause the formation of amino acids. We know that cells, no not that one, are made from mostly water and amino acids, as well as sugars, nucleotides, and other things, all of which are chemical and naturally occurring. Of course, this is a grossly oversimplified explanation to get to the point of, we know how cells can form starting with basic elements like carbon atoms, and it is entirely natural. Because we understand this, we have no need to invoke the supernatural when we have a perfectly plausible natural explanation. I wonder if anyone calls people that accept cell theory cellists, who practice the religion of cellism. But I'm rambling. Science is just so fun. Let's get into today's video. Brad Stine has issues. Not only that, that's the name of the channel for the video, Atheists Can't Grasp the Beauty of God's Creation Brad Stine. At first, I thought he was a comedian based on his setup. He appears to be a preacher talking to an initially rather unenthused audience. I am on the lookout for the argument from beauty here. Do you think he's going to use it? Maybe a look at the trees argument? Make your predictions below. Seriously, pause the video and make a prediction. We can check back to see who's right. Don't worry, I can wait. Everyone got their predictions in? Okay, let's see what issue Brad Stine has today.
You see, it matters what you think and believe. If you are a Darwinist, and there may be some here today, then you have to accept the conclusion that Darwinism has to give you. What is that? That everything you look at and hold dear is an accident.
I most certainly do not need to accept this. I think you are conflating things happening by accident and by chance. We can look at statistics and determine what the chance is of something happening based on the information we have. The more good information we have, the more accurate our predictions are. A fairly weighted 6-sided die, fairly rolled on a level surface here on Earth, has a 1 in 6 chance of rolling any specific one of the numbers on the die. We know this because we have all the relevant information to make determinations. Could gravity suddenly stop working and that die just never stop spinning? I would argue no, but in some effectively impossibly weird circumstances it could. But because we have no reason to think that it will, we ignore that scenario. If something existed in the distant past, we have no reason to suspect that everything is an accident now. Accident is not the same as chance.
And even those who you love is just your DNA tricking you.
What are you talking about? DNA doesn't trick anyone any more than any other nucleic acid. This is a fun combination of two logical fallacies. First, even if I were to grant the argument as correct, this is an appeal to emotion. He is using evocative language and tone to make the argument sound worse than it actually is. He is using the fact that humans experience love, and wouldn't it just be terrible if we didn't, to try to convince his audience of his argument. The second is the anthropomorphic fallacy. The only things that have the ability to be dishonest are thinking agents. A person evaluating something and being incorrect is not the thing tricking the person. It is human error.
Into survival. There is no love. Can't exist.
Who says this at all? Love is the term we put on a specific type of psychological state that includes subjective, physiological, and behavioral elements. Love exists just like any other emotion does, just like any other state of being does. I can't help but think that this guy heard this from some other pastor and thinks it sounded good, so he's just regurgitating it, not bothering to try to understand the natural aspects of emotions. Though we are already at a wonderful strawman argument, people can accept the fact of evolution and also accept that humans feel emotions, including love. I don't know anyone who doesn't think that emotions exist. In fact, we know how to elicit many different emotions in people. While we may not understand them perfectly, we do have some knowledge of them and that they exist. But why do you think Darwinists think love can't exist?
Because love isn't molecular.
Do you think that people don't think things exist if they aren't molecular? Do you know what molecular means? It just means it's made up of a group of atoms. Is this yet another video where they argue that if something non-physical exists, then God must exist? According to the Research Institute of Molecular Pathology, quote, just like seeing or hearing, our feelings are based on the activity of nerve cells or neurons. Emotions are characterized by the activity of multiple areas of the brain, end quote. According to Professor Insop Shim of the Kyung School of Medicine in South Korea, quote, recent research have made remarkable progress in understanding how emotional behaviors are molecular encoded in the brain in several directions, end quote. Links for both of these are in the description. We know that brain states are physical, so this point is just incorrect, and I have never heard anyone using this wording.
It's just an instinct. It's not even real.
I'm going to ignore this obvious diminutization of what anyone thinks of something as complex as why people experience any emotion.
Think of that repercussion.
Argument from consequences incoming?
The evolutionist, if he was consistent, would have to look at the sunset and say, look at that mass gaseous explosion. Only the theist gets to say, look at the sunset.
What a terribly stupid point. He is effectively saying that Darwinists, to be consistent, must explain what something is rather than just use the term. Only theists can use a single word to mean a more complicated thing? As if anyone is required to explain what every single word means rather than use the word itself. Words are shortcuts for concepts and ideas. People have a general understanding of what most terms mean. If I go to the grocery store, I can say I went to get salt. I don't need to say, the physical being that constitutes one of the collection of living beings classified as Homo sapien, of which is currently using sound waves at a specific frequency in order to express the idea of the movement of that collection of atoms from one location to another, where an exchange of one monetary value is exchanged for the item used to store things, in this case contained within are many small things comprised of only two atoms, sodium and chlorine. That is just ridiculous to even posit.
The atheist gets to say, look at that gigantic mound of minerals and dirt and rocks piled upon itself with crystallized water. Only the theist can say, look at the mountains.
Why is it that only a theist can use words as shortcuts? How descriptive are you saying that atheists have to be in order to say the same thing? Why can an atheist use minerals but not mountain? Why do they not have to say a solid inorganic substance of natural occurrence when referring to minerals in the description of a mountain? You know, I think this may be the worst point a theist has ever made in any video I've watched. So good job at being number one.
Only we get poetry and music.
Do you think that there's no evolutionary explanation for art? Do you think that evolution has nothing to do with things being aesthetically pleasing? Here's the setup for an argument from beauty I mentioned in the intro. 1 point for me.
Remember, Darwinism is all about survival. There would never be music I could find you.
Do you think that survival at any time meant killing literally every other being you can find? No one thinks this. It is because we have found better ways to survive that we were able to make things like music.
Plus, it's hard to run away from a guy chasing you if you're wearing a tuba.
I played tuba in middle and high school. You don't wear a tuba unless you put the bell over your head. That doesn't make a lot of sense. If someone were chasing you and you needed your tuba, you'd just carry it. You effectively wear a sousaphone, in which case it's much easier to run in. You can also use it as a weapon, as I have knocked out 2 people with mine entirely on accident. Anyway, I'm not going to look more into this silly joke.
You die! It's about survival. Only just survival.
Not quite, but even granting this, explaining how things changed to what they are now is all about their survival and the traits that help them survive.
Raw instinct, no purpose, no value, no mind before matter. You are worthless and meaningless, and when you die, who cares?
A blatant appeal to emotion here. People want someone to care about them. Evolution is a process. Processes don't care about who lives or dies, sure, but people do. Humans have empathy. Empathy is an evolutionary trait. You want someone to care about you, so you care about other people. This way, humans as a whole survive a bit better than if it didn't happen. People who cared and had empathy typically lived longer and were able to attract mates who cared about their own lives, so beings with empathy were able to pass on their genetic material more often. Even your dramatic generalization, as wrong as it is, if thought about for just a moment, goes against your point.
That's what you get. I wish evolutionists would simply be consistent. If you really believe it, then allow it to continue. Will you quit throwing these beach whales back in the ocean? They're trying to evolve. That has to be so frustrating for them. They finally make it to the beach. Hey, maybe I can get some hands going here. What are you doing? No.
Evolution happens to populations, not individuals. Again, humans evolved with empathy, having an understanding of another being's state of being. But granting that to be consistent we should allow it to continue, do you think that means not interacting with the environment? Do you think that humans can't make improvements to their lives by helping other animals survive? This argument is, if evolution is real, then humans cannot improve their lives by interacting with their environments. Of course, this is just silly. Do you know what happens to beached whales if humans don't help? Just look up the ramifications. Even for a silly, simplistic argument, this point is tremendously short-sighted.
They take this beautiful creation of God Almighty and say it's worthless and meaningless, but yet it exists and it works. Let's deconstruct it and see how it accidentally came to being.
They really don't. The process of evolution doesn't make assessments of value or meaning. Humans do because we are a social species. We need to interact with others and our environment. We have entirely natural reasons to care about other people and the environment. We have logical, natural explanations for why humans assign worth and meaning to things. So, while I reject that it is a creation, and I reject the idea of a God existing, I can still assign meaning to things and make judgments on the worth of things around me.
I love it when they come up with these other concepts after millions of years. It evolved camouflage so it could evade its captors after millions of years. What did it do in the meantime? Reason with its captors? Hey, just a twig.
See, you are thinking about evolution entirely backward. Evolution doesn't have a specific goal in mind. Things changed based on mutations. What mutations stick around are the ones that are not detrimental enough to restrict the passing of genes to offspring. Animals like the Arctic hare develop their camouflage to blend in, making them harder to spot in the snow. Because of this, their predators have also developed the same trait, which allowed them to be harder for the hare to spot. For each instance of camouflage, these traits keep developing a little bit in response to the other. Prey animals get better at hiding, and in response, predator animals get better at finding them. And in response, prey animals get better at hiding. And in response, well, you get the idea. Though for many species, before certain camouflage, they hid underground and in trees.
Did you hear the concept? After millions of years, it evolved camouflage to evade its predators. If it took millions of years, apparently it didn't need it. That's a good dang track record, if you ask me.
Do you think that these species just weren't changing at all over that time? Or do you think that whoever told you this was stating that the current camouflage eventually developed after 1 million years of changes and adaptations to them and to their environment? As new predators get introduced to an environment, the prey animals need to adapt, developing new traits in order to survive and reproduce. The fur of the Arctic hare changes color depending on the season. In the summer, there is less snow, so they have brown or gray fur, while in the winter there is more snow, so they have white fur. This change helps them survive by blending into their surroundings depending on the season. The ones that couldn't do this either died out or hid during the off-season. How do you think changes in an animal population over time happen? We know they do happen, so how, if not through evolutionary processes? And that's the end of his video. So it seems like Brad Stine's issue is that he doesn't understand evolution. I know, you're saying, but Dark, a creationist preacher who doesn't understand evolution and constantly gets it wrong in order to make his points? Surely not! So a vicious strawman on top of several appeals to emotion and an anthropomorphic fallacy. It also seems like a bit of ignorance and or personal incredulity as well. But let me try to sum up the main points here. People who accept the fact of evolution think that everything is an accident, which just isn't true. They also think love doesn't exist, also demonstrably not true. Atheists can't use words as shortcuts, which is so stupid it went around the corner and is now my favorite argument ever. We should name this argument. I think I want to call it the verbosity argument. I want to know what you think for the name of this argument should be. Leave a comment with a good name for this argument. Art can only exist in a theistic world. We know the appreciation of aesthetics is an evolutionary trait. Evolution doesn't care, so people who accept the fact of evolution also don't care. This ignores evolutionary traits like empathy and social skills. If you believe evolution happens, then why interfere with the evolution of your environment? Humans are animals and part of the ecosystem. We're not separate from everything else in that manner. When a shark eats another fish, are they interfering with evolution, or is that part of the natural order of things? People who accept the fact of evolution think everything is meaningless and worthless. This ignores the fact that humans are the ones who imbue things with meaning and worth. Doing this helps us survive and thrive. More evolutionary traits. Finally, how did animals survive before they developed their current form of camouflage? The argument from animals and environments never change. Plainly ignorant. That's it for this one. What did you think? Do you think evolution doesn't explain all of this perfectly fine? Or do you think that there are better explanations than what I gave? Let me know in the comments. How did you do with your predictions? I got close enough to the argument from Beauty for it to count, but his actual arguments were stupider than what I thought they were going to be. All in all, nothing new here, just evolution bad, therefore God. It is no accident that the like button is sitting there, waiting with the goal in mind of being pressed, so hit it to fulfill its sole purpose. As for the subscribe button, has it developed sufficient camouflage? Are your eyes good enough to spot it? Hit it to prove you are the better subscribed predator animal. If you like what I do and want to throw a thank you my way, you can become a patron at patreon.com/DarkOfAllTrades. Subscriptions start as low as $1 a month. That is an average of just less than 4 cents a day. Oh wait, I'm an atheist, so I have to say, if sufficient chemicals have been produced in the organ planted firmly inside the uppermost part of your physical being, then potentially activate that multifunction organ toward taking the local available monetary item and present it through the electronic medium of international communication and entertainment at the aforementioned location of digital files that are written using HTML. And as always, keep learning.